The moment I opened my front door, I knew something was wrong. The woman standing beneath my porch light wasn't smiling like someone arriving for a first date. She looked pale, breathless, and frightened, one hand gripping the strap of her purse while the other held a white cane tightly against her side. Before I could even introduce myself, she stepped inside and whispered that someone had been following her. I looked past her toward the quiet street in Cedar Falls, Iowa, but there was nobody there. Only a parked car at the corner, its headlights off, sitting beneath an old maple tree. If you believe that kindness can appear at the most unexpected moment, that people deserve compassion before judgment, and that hope can give someone the courage to begin again, take a moment to like this story, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel for more stories about kindness, faith, and second chances. My name is Nathan, and I had never been good at blind dates, which felt almost ironic that evening. My sister Rebecca had insisted that I meet a woman named Grace, a piano teacher who had recently moved to Iowa after losing her mother. I had been alone for nearly 2 years after my engagement ended, and although I told everyone I was perfectly content, the truth was that I had grown comfortable with loneliness. I worked as a civil engineer, came home to a small house, cooked simple meals, and spent Sunday mornings at church. I wasn't looking for someone to rescue me. I simply wasn't sure I remembered how to let someone close. Grace was supposed to arrive at 7. At 7:08, she appeared at my door looking as though she had been running. Her voice trembled when she told me about the person behind her. She said she had noticed the same dark sedan several blocks away, then again near the grocery store, and finally outside my neighborhood. She couldn't see the vehicle, but she could hear the engine whenever it stopped nearby. Because of her blindness, people often assumed she imagined things she couldn't visually confirm. That uncertainty had frightened her more than the possibility itself. I wanted to reassure her without making her fear seem foolish. I locked the door, closed the curtains, and called my friend Marcus, who worked for the local police department. While we waited, I sat across from Grace and noticed something that changed the way I understood her fear. She wasn't trembling because she was helpless. She was trembling because she had spent months being forced to prove that her instincts were worth believing. Marcus arrived and carefully checked the neighborhood. The sedan was gone. There was no immediate danger, but he told us that if Grace noticed the car again, she should record every detail she could and contact the authorities. When he left, Grace apologized for ruining our first date. I told her she hadn't ruined anything. In fact, I admitted that I was more interested in knowing why she had come to my house despite being frightened than I was in having the perfect dinner. That question opened a door neither of us expected. Grace explained that after her mother's death, she discovered several letters hidden among old music books. The letters had been written by a former student of her mother, a woman named Hannah, who had disappeared from their lives years earlier. The letters suggested that Hannah had been trying to reconnect with Grace's mother because she believed someone had stolen money from a community music program. Grace had been quietly investigating the matter, not for revenge, but because she believed her mother's name deserved to be cleared. The following week, Grace and I visited the church where her mother had volunteered. An elderly administrator named Thomas remembered Hannah and gave Grace an old donation ledger. Inside it were discrepancies that matched the dates mentioned in the letters. Eventually, investigators discovered that the missing funds had been connected to a former treasurer who had already moved out of state. The person following Grace turned out not to be the thief, but a private investigator hired by the treasurer's family to find out what evidence she had uncovered. Once authorities became involved, the harassment stopped. But the greatest change wasn't legal. It happened quietly between Grace and me. During those weeks, I stopped seeing her blindness as something I needed to protect her from. I began seeing the strength she carried every day. Grace taught me that courage wasn't the absence of fear. Sometimes courage was simply taking another step while fear was still walking beside you. Months later, we returned to the same porch where our strange first date had begun. Grace placed her cane against the wall and smiled as she listened to the evening breeze moving through the trees. She told me that when she first arrived, she had expected a terrifying night. Instead, she had found someone willing to believe her. I realized then that she had given me something too. She had reminded me that my heart wasn't broken beyond repair, it had simply been waiting for a reason to open again. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and leave a comment telling us whether you would have opened the door if you were Nathan. Sometimes one small act of compassion can become the beginning of a completely different life. And before you go, leave a comment with the word hope if you believe that the people we meet by chance can sometimes become the people who change our lives forever. Grace came to my door believing someone was following her, but she left that night with something neither of us expected, the first step toward a future where neither of us had to face life alone. Sometimes God doesn't send us the answer we were looking for. Sometimes He sends us a person who reminds us that we were never meant to walk through the darkness by ourselves.